Diogriv, Namaste, Bom dia, Assalamu alaikum, hi, bonjour à tout le monde. So it's lovely. Thank you very much for coming along to our, sorry, Kevin, my Tagalog isn't the very best. So, so you're all very, very welcome to the final day of the Power of Potential. And I think the energy has just been palpable over the past couple of days. So let's keep that energy level going for the next couple of days. But before we kind of get into business, I just wanted to kind of draw attention to the fact that later on we'll have kind of closing remarks, but I know that people have plans today. You know, not everybody may be able to stay for the full duration and that kind of thing. So I just want to say an incredible, really heartfelt thank you to especially to two of my colleagues, to Emma Richardson and to Michelle Malomo, who has been just incredible powerhouses of energy and commitment in terms of making this happen. You know, really, there's no way that this could have happened without certainly those two colleagues and the wider colleagues from Inclusion by Design, Setu, Kate, Lisa, and Dawn, and Kirsty, who did the podcasts, and Kirsty Wedgbury. Kirsty is here as well, who's been chairing some of the sessions. Just that level of commitment, and it's really brought a kind of a focus to, and Kevin, of course, thank you so much. But it's really brought that level of I think bond to the Inclusion by Design team. And again, in terms of and our external guests, thank you, just in time as well. Susie Gronstead and Tracy Galvin in particular have been just absolutely stellar in their works. I know in relation to helping Emma in particular with the scientific committee, and Susie, we wouldn't have been able to connect with the rest of the world without Susie yesterday, you know. And again, just to I think to flag the wider involvement, Betsy Dalton has been just tremendous as well, as always, just consistent and persistent and determined. And Mustafa Abi as well, and all the colleagues, Ashna, all of the colleagues from ICE and Include. Thank you. Shukran Bisef. So a great, massive thanks to all of you. Massive. So again, like that, we've got it's not complete. And I did sing your praises, Lisa, in your absence as well. So thanks for putting up with me for the past kind of. And Linda, thank you as well. Okay, thank you. And again, thanks to our panelists. This isn't the kind of final thank you, but it's a kind of an Irish thank you way of saying thank you as well. So you say it at the beginning and you'll say it at the end as well. So just to say that level of appreciation, it has been such a collaborative event, and a lot of energy and dedication from everybody involved. And my goodness gracious, where would I have been without these guys here? Without our the students who have given of their time and commitment and insight. Yeah. You are, Alice, you are allowed to clap for yourself, in fairness. And I think a little pat on the back for all of you, and a self pat on the back as well. You can pat one another on the back, exactly. So you've done a tremendous job. But as I said, we'll revisit this a little bit towards the end of the day. formally, but I just wanted to again just to thank everybody, heartfelt thanks to everybody for making this happen. And over to yourself, Michelle, in terms of kind of the daily grind, as it were.
Housekeeping sounds really. So again today, if the fire alarm goes, we're not expecting a practice. It's the real thing. So run for your life. No. No, if you could exit the fire exit is a really good one there, but we can go this way as well. And you will be guided where to gather. That's why we've asked you to sign in, so we don't leave anyone behind. So I've been challenged this week to think about myself in terms of audio description. So I'm going to try, and it's several attempts. So I'm a 50-something English woman who is a Christian, and I'm married into an African family. So that's kind of quite a challenge, isn't it, to start with. Today, I am wearing a salmon pink dress with red flowers with a small white centre. It's a maxi style dress. This is, my students help me here. And it's got a Bardo neckline, okay, which I'm keeping well on the shoulders, so that's me in a nutshell, and I love that. I'm gonna start encouraging my students to do that as well. So thank you for that. Well, it's my job today to introduce our keynote. And I've got to be honest, Abby, I'm having a bit of a Swifty moment, if those of you in the audience. So I feel like I'm a Moriarty, if that makes sense, because I'm a big fan. And you won't realise the influence that you've had on my UDL journey, but I'll come to that in just a minute. But I've got to do the professional stuff, if you know what I mean. So Abby was recently appointed as a Pro Vice-Chancellor for Education and Students at the University of Lincoln, and I can't think of any better Pro Vice-Chancellor position for you. Previously, she's held the role of PVC for Learning and Teaching at the University of Sunderland. But I'm going to sort of stop there and say I met Abigail. She probably doesn't remember because I was in the crowd. So again, that's sort of Swifty mentality, if you know what I mean. I was in the crowd, and I took a trip with some colleagues from this university on a very wet day. We got stuck in traffic in a university minibus. See? Oh, she remembers. We took a trip to De Montfort University. Those of you that have read my blog, at that time I was actually thinking of leaving teaching. I'd sort of kind of thought, I don't think this is for me. I need to probably jog on somewhere. But actually, reluctantly, I was almost pushed onto the minibus, I have to say, by a very dear colleague who's retired now, Karen. But actually, what happened when we spent the day with you and your colleagues at De Montfort, something happened for me where there was a light bulb moment. I'm dyslexic, and suddenly I was hearing things that if they'd have happened for me, things would have been a lot easier. So that's the very start of my, and I remember just being like, things were making sense. So I'm very thankful that I got on that minibus. And I was able to listen and spend a day with Abby and her team, because it really started me on my UDL journey. And I have to say, I've not looked back. So thank you for that. So I'm sorry to embarrass you, but I've been really nervous. I was like, can't go and talk to her at the dinner. So, but I know that what's going to happen in this next hour, I know that it will challenge your mindsets. It will transform your way of thinking, and hopefully kind of call you to action. That's what I'm hoping. And I know that's, having looked at your abstract, that's where we're going. So could we give a really nice, we're going to say Worcester welcome to Abby.
So welcome everybody. That was unbelievable. Thank you so much. That was I'm speechless. My husband would go, that never happens. How did that happen? So my name is Abigail Moriarty. I'm the Pro Vice-Chancellor for Education and Students. I have to pause when I say that because I've only been in this role for 11 weeks. So I still come out of my drive when I'm going to work and nearly gone down the wrong way of the M1 because I was going to Sunderland. So I am here today, and I'm here today to talk about a personal journey. And in my abstract, I was in quite a strop actually when I wrote it, because I was thinking, this is several years since I met Sean and Richard when I started my UDL journey in 2015, and thought, why am I still having this conversation now? Why after all this time, it's so blatantly bloody obvious? Why are universities in my area really struggling with the concept that UDL is the answer? Not just to teaching, learning and assessment, but a whole provider approach. From estates to publications to technology. So I was in a bit of a strop. So this is my journey. I have notes. I spent copious hours on them, and do you know what? I'm not going to read them at all. But just in case. Okay. Oh, you know that technology. Oh, there you go. So this is like the breaking news. This is like, wow. This, you know, should be the ticker tape on the bottom of the Sky News, is systematic change and the role of UDL. It's not a shocker, is it? But it feels like in 2024, we're revisiting things that we've revisited as a community several times. We have people that are onboarding with UDL every day. The challenge that I have is the systematic inclusive change. And this is going to be an exploration of my journey, as I've worked for 4 universities. By profession and background, I am a nurse and midwife. And I started my teaching qualification and my experience at Sheffield Hallam University as a lecturer practitioner, a foot in both camps. Did several teaching degrees, a master's, a PhD, but none of that taught me about UDL. It was about teaching in a very traditional way. And then I went to De Montfort University, and I was at De Montfort University for a relatively long time, and I was a relatively junior member of staff. And I'd been there, and I will talk you through that journey of why UDL became my best friend, and for me, the university's best friend. More recently, I was the PVC at University of Sunderland, had a bit of a blip there called the pandemic. But do you know what? There's ever silver lining. It was a dreadful experience. People died, but it was a great opportunity for UDL. And 11 weeks ago, the University of Lincoln. So that's where I am. And this is throughout how UDL really did start to transform student experience. And that welcome was very heartwarming. And I was reminded at dinner yesterday that I have done presentations and discussions before. I was reminded of the Arrow by Tracy, noting a disability that I wore on my head for an hour and 15 minutes. Got in the car to go home still with it in my head. The cheese sandwich that I actually brought in to show as a cheese sandwich as scaffolding, learning and teaching that my husband made for me. And the infamous, but not quite forgotten, pin the tail on the UDL donkey. Well, that was something we can move on from. So what I'm going to start looking at is right at the beginning, 2015. For me, relatively junior member of staff in education, was programme leader, was involved with learning and teaching, and I was a Duracell bunny. So for our international colleagues, that's somebody that goes, I'll do that all the time. I have several in the room. And it started with a Friday afternoon email from a senior member of staff that said, we would like you to join the Disability Enhancement Programme, the DEP board. It's like, oh, that sounds nice. What's this then? And this was in July of 2015. And we had the following year in English universities a change in disability support funding, the DSA allowance, that meant that students who would get support with scribes, mentoring, some equipment, personalised learning was going to stop band 1 and band 2. And most importantly, what universities need to recognise for 2016 was it's your responsibility, universities, and rightly so. But the point was that university had taken the medical model approach and just taken the money that students had allocated to them to spend on reasonable adjustments. There was no inclusivity, it was a medical model. For the university that I worked at, this accounted for 18% of students, way above the sector average for students with declared disability on enrolments. And by the end of students' time at the university, in-year declaration meant that 23% of the university, nearly a quarter of the university, had declared disabilities. The economic impact of this is that university needed to cover £5 million worth of funding because the DSA would not cover that. And the Friday afternoon email is, we've got this board that is going to mitigate against the money. This was about finance. Isn't that sad? But the elephant in the room, let's work with that. The university at the time could not say we are not going to be doing this because it was a university that attracted students with disabilities. Our conversion rate of students coming onto the university with disabilities and converting to a place was 80%. It was an income stream. Some universities, Imperial, decided not to do anything, because what was their level of students with disability? In fact, they say we'll pay like for like, and their coffers could afford it. So what happened on a Friday evening, I was asked to come up with some ideas, Abby, on what you think we can do for the Disability Enhancement Project. I was offended by the title and I didn't realise it. So I went home, Google, other search engines are available, and I looked up inclusivity, equality, and so on. And I found this from a presentation that I did, and this is what I found on that weekend in 2015. And please note, urban design for London was more popular than CAST. That's sad. But note, worryingly, is that because of my related searches, vodka came up. Don't quite know what was happening there. So the reply to the Monday morning was to a senior member of Teaching and Learning that had portfolio development on their radar, is got a set of principles of curriculum development that gives individuals the equality to learn. Blank face. It's a blueprint for all teaching, learning and assessments at the university. No, it'll work for everybody, not just that disability crowd. Blank faces. So thank goodness to the author of this diagram, because it saved my bacon in so many different ways. At the university, we've got an equal approach to supporting students. So I said to my Deputy Vice-Chancellor, Michael, this is what we could do. What we've got to support students with disabilities, and this is me on the end because I'm the short one, is to be able to offer the same for everybody. But you know, Michael, we're still not going to support those students really in need. It's going to cost a lot for those boxes for everybody. We could save up the boxes and we could then support the students that really need it. So the ones that go, me, we can support those. And pretty much, if there's somebody that just needs a little leg up, we can do that. But everybody can see, for my American colleagues, the ball game in UK language, rounders. That's okay. That's okay. So oh, will I, is it because I'm wondering? I'll just stay still. So we can see here, and I said to my Deputy Vice-Chancellor, this is making reasonable adjustments. Oh, reasonable adjustments, I understand reasonable adjustments. So how much is this going to cost? Money. I says, no, you're losing the point. We want a blueprint, a set of curriculum principles that underpin everybody. Take the fence away. Bring people closer to rounders. Because by doing that, it is for all students. And that's when, for me, the penny really drops. Because I was looking at my colleagues, my executive of the university was thinking about disability as a discrete set of students and something that we would have to do for those students. I'm going to give you a whistle-stop tour of the next 14 months at De Montfort University. The primary aim was £5 million. We could not afford to match that. And the reason behind this presentation is the word systematic. Wow, there's a lot going on here. So on this diagram, it literally shows the systematic way from July to December of 15 to 16 of how the university prepared for the DSA changing. Not just for students with disabilities, for all. And we had a systematic approach that had to have senior buy-in. So the systematic approach was sold by that diagram to the executive at the time. It was absorbed into normal teaching and practice, meaning that it wasn't out there separately. It was embedded into curriculum governance. And I led the Universal Design Project Board. And actually, that became the name of the project, and disability was kind of redundant because it was about the project. There are 6 work streams that had the responsibility of transforming for all students, 21,000 students based in the East Midlands, with transnational education around the world, including all types of learning. Online learning, undergraduate, postgraduate, PGR. Nobody was excluded. This was called the Big Bang. The first work stream was to look at assurance where we'd got UDL elements. So introducing the concept of UDL and then seeing the bright sparks at the back going, I do that anyway. I do that anyway. And the understanding that that was actually, and the quote was, it's just good teaching practice. That allowed me to have early adopters. And one of the secrets to this success was the people that were really interested and who were on board were not senior staff. They weren't line managers. They weren't heads of school. They were people that loved student learning, teaching and assessment. Those became crucial for the sustainability in the future. Where we'd got good practice, we highlighted it, we flagged it, we pimped it out to everybody else. We showed the difference it made on student outcomes. I sold and hooked in colleagues by what it's in for them. And we showed that where we'd got clear UDL practice, students passed, they succeeded and they achieved. And by a consequence of that, you didn't have to mark over the summer. Oh, that was interesting. The second one was to embed universal design into all teaching, learning, assessment modes. So across the board, major curriculum revamp for over 20,000 modules to ensure assessment and UDL principles was not only there, but articulated into practice. I had nurses, I'm one of them, solicitors, accountants say, sorry, Abby, can't do this because my professional statutory regulatory body says we can't. So we'll just opt out of this, thank you. So we had a task force, or the SWAT team, as I called them in my head, that challenged every PSRB to identify where the principles could not be applied. One PSRB. What was it? NMC. The NMC, my own. Yes, the Nursing and Midwifery Council, my very own, embarrassed me because it meant... Absolutely. So the NMC, my apologies, is the Nursing and Midwifery Council that regulates nursing and midwifery professions in the United Kingdom. And if you're not on an NMC approved programme, you don't get to practice. And the NMC is an example of professional statutory regulatory bodies. So they're the kind of big cheeses. They're the ones that give programmes accreditation that universities want to study. So all of the other PSRBs, law, medicine, all were absolutely fine when we actually examined the process of universal design for learning. Nursing required students to sit an unseen exam, numeracy exam, for maths calculations in a room with no calculator, no help or support, where in clinical practice, Calvin's like going like this to me. Okay, is that all right? So in clinical practice, that is the opposite that you would ever do. So it actually contradicts authentic assessment in the extreme. But the PSRB was a battle right to the very end. But actually it became an opportunity to really look how PSRBs were, shall we say, legitimised in the curriculum. The university had a technology enhancement programme, so we piggybacked on this. And we had this thing called Lecture Capture, Panopto, as we're using at this very moment. In 2015, we were looking at it, and so one way of reducing the burden of individual scribes is we mandated lecture capture for all first-year students starting in the 2016 that wouldn't have scribes. Mandated, not an option. No, we can't do this because we're going to have intellectual property considerations. We mandated it. It caused huge issues with the union. I got a Friday afternoon call from the Times Higher Education saying I was bullying staff into selling their ideas. And it was a challenge. Most universities hadn't done it at that time. And now it's absolutely the norm. Why wouldn't we? I acknowledged that the PGR students had a particular set of expectations that we really wanted to work with them on. And I think I mentioned yesterday to some people in the dinner is the way that PGR students were supervised, reported, and their examinations, i.e. Viva Voices, and how we could support with the UDL principles. And the biggest, but it's at the bottom, but it's the biggest, is onboarding staff development. Being able to sell UDL that would be translated into practice all the time, and it not to be a one-off. This was depending on 18% of our students and their experience coming through. Okay, phase 1, done. I'll tell you about the impact. Straight away, all of these received evaluation and stats to underpin how they were successful in practice. Phase 2, we started straight away. So this was a 4-year project. And what was showed is how we could continue the project to have longitudinal impact. So the first one is about technology. So the lecture capture from the pilot was hugely successful with students, and the students in the second and third year said, oh, can we have that, please? And so we rolled it out to all students. We used technology to enhance learning and teaching within the classrooms, and we had a whole suite of online software that we made available to everybody. If a student wanted to use Dragon, they had to go into a particular suite and to be able to use that in that space. So we put all of our software on our Jukebox app, which was available remotely. It cost some money because of licenses, but it meant that that was available for all students. I use Dragon, but that doesn't mean that it's not beneficial for me. Then we have the teaching practice, and you'll notice this is spelled with an S. It's not a spelling mistake. It's on purpose because the practice is the art. It's the demonstration. Because it was really looking at how teaching and the fundamentals of teaching had to shift. It challenged convention and it annoyed traditional educationalists. We did, as demonstrated, major curriculum designs, but it needs to be future-proof. So for any new programme or validation, a programme had to be, quote, UDL-able. And at a validation, the staff and students and externals were asked to challenge anything that wasn't set on the principles. The evaluation and impact meant that we were able to demonstrate that not only were students from identified disabilities were being supported well, but actually there was an overall feeling it was the right thing to do. So all of these things came to fruition, and in September 2019, the Disability Student Operational Group just became a thing in the university. What that did was it started to get the feedback from the evaluation to normalise this in the sector. And the university was involved in lots of different higher education, OFS, HEFGE, Higher Education Funding Council for England, lots of different projects to show the benefit of normalising support for students in university using UDL, benefiting those with disabilities, but actually the whole philosophy is it's all of them. Okay, so what? How much did it cost? Raise your hands. 4-year project. I got 5 million that I was told that we could not afford. 120,000 pounds. It's not. So the challenge was utilising resources in a way that was beneficial for everybody. that resulted in, as mentioned earlier, is part of the UDL project is we stopped timed examinations. So the challenge was, why do we time restrict examinations? Unless time is a competency standard that we're testing, let's take away time. So there was huffing and puffing and sucking of teeth. So we said we'd pilot it in a particular area, and we had a 2-hour examination that was that was time restricted normally, in a room, individual tables. Generally, 18 to 23% of the population had disabilities, so we had individual arrangements for those students. Had about 5 or 6 different rooms that were also invigilated. So we took away the time and we said to the students, the exam starts at this time, you can stay in this room and complete your exam for as long as possible. And we had to explain this in several different ways. It was like, really? Really? It's like, yes. If you want to sit in this room for 6 hours for that examination, you can do that. It's entirely up to you. So it's a normal 2-hour examination. What was the longest time? What time did the last student leave that examination room? Go on, be brave. 3 hours? 2.5? 2 hours, 11 minutes. The feedback from the students was that the anxiety of the time restraints being there is they were more confident. They were able to actually think about what was in front of them and challenge that, rather than feeling that it was a race. Guess what happened with the attainment? It improved. What a shock, what a horror. And we also saved several pounds of invigilators' scores. The university in 2017 got a gold TEF award. So in England, this is a teaching excellence framework that all universities have to complete to be able to charge the maximum fees. And so UDL was an absolute key element. The university was invited to Higher Education Funding Council, HEFGI, catalyst bids, and was involved in decolonising the curriculum with Kingston University and Coventry and Wolverhampton. And De Montfort University used UDL as the principles of decolonising the curriculum. We received press sector praise. We had quite a lot of interest from other universities on not the what, but the how. The how. The Office for Students, again, an English regulator for higher education, said that this is an expectation that all universities need to have reasonable adjustments within their experience. So basically, if you don't do it, you're letting your students down, which I absolutely agree with, but not about the way or the funding to do that. A very unsurprising side effect from me was staff satisfaction. It's actually staff reported back, surveys, focus groups, that once they got over their hump, is that they actually saw the benefit for them and their teaching, and they felt reinvigorated with their teaching. Not all. Technology. So we had lecture capture in the first year. It was aimed at 7,000 new students in 2016. How many hits or times did students use that in one academic year? This is, give me a number if you like, Bruce Forsyth. Up, down. 20? Any more? How many? Yeah. 1 million. So 7,000 students used lecture capture for a million times that group of students. Obviously, some more than others, but the impact was there, and there's a clear indicator of engagement around assessment periods, shock horror, reviewing information that they had received in a digestible format. The second phase introduced captioning that wasn't introduced in the first. So students were very, I would say, pleased. So if I went up to a student at De Montfort University and say, what's your experience of UDL, what would they say? They say, what's UDL? And rightly so. And this is the biggest criticism I had. The students don't know they're getting it. Exactly. That's exactly what's supposed to happen. Is that this is their learning and teaching experience. It's not something done to them, it's done with them. This is an example of how the demonstration and expectation of using UDL in all learning and teaching. We had policies, we had guidance, we had toolkits, we had everything that was developed for all levels of programs. What was really interesting that we were repeatedly asked for was a checklist. Really? Really a checklist? But that is what was requested. So we did it, but we linked it with all the policies underneath. And this was the most downloadable and accessible document on the university's central intranet. To maintain and sustain, universal design for learning was built into strategy. It became a key pillar. We had challenges with bringing people on board. So what I want you to know about was how to win friends and influence people with UDL. The challenges and barriers. Scalability. This was financially driven and motivated, therefore it was a big bang. But if I'd been an individual module leader, I could have implemented these approach in my own practice, a slow burn. And the criticisms and the challenges I've had from groups from here, like I'm facing today, is I can't do that because I don't have senior buy-in, or I don't have people of like-minded opinions in that UDL camp. My pushback is you yourself are an educationalist, a practitioner, stake yourself out there and take a risk. I found the people that were adopting UDL principles in assessment and practice were my allies, and they were staff that were from disparate areas, from the sciences, the humanities, from student support, and I absolutely onboarded professional services because I needed them to understand it was about the student's experience. The student body themselves were more concerned about the financial implications, so selling them as a really engaged community to ensure they understood the motivations was clear. Find your levers. So the board of governors at the universities didn't get this, and I was, via various different people, was challenged to come and explain it, come and sit down so they get it. But the board of governors in most universities are so removed from the student experience and so removed from higher education and learning and teaching. How do you explain? And to be utterly blunt and honest and transparent, I couldn't, but they understand the finances. That was my levers. It had to be sustainability. It was a 4-year project, and at several times staff changed, vice-chancellors changed, they come and go, and a passion or a particular project can die with a change in leadership. So it had to be sustained, and that sustainability was driven by very much outcomes. And those champions highlighting the impact in programme areas. We narrowed the attainment gap between BME students and white students. Students with disabilities attainment improved against students with non-disabilities. The big challenge I had was staff saying, you're doing this for students, but you're not doing it for staff, which reflected the culture of the institution of how staff who felt that they had been marginalised wasn't getting the same opportunity. And that was a true reflection, and that was a good call out. There was resource. This wasn't done without intention of a commitment, but we had the technology that we were using. It was how it was going to be employed. The biggest resource was time, and that was time from staff. And again, that's very difficult to cost out because people volunteered time. They wanted to get involved. They were one of those, I'll do it. I don't need the workload. That was the conversation. Or I don't know if you've got the capacity to take on this project, to be a champion of UDL in biochemistry. And a lot of staff were like, this is something that I want to do. What was possible in the later is strategy in promotions about how people use UDL, had to demonstrate that to get promotion. It was in everybody's appraisal. And it's actually part of the staff recruitment strategy now to clearly understand that somebody joining that university is onboarding to UDL. They may read a video, they watch a video and so on, but the whole point is it was in the DNA. Internal and external recognition. So we got some very nice publicity and we contributed to journals and policy. And that was good to see that the staff in all different areas were being recognised. The most important, I want to leave this with you, is it is not a pet project, and that it needs tenacity and passion, but it needs to have strategic levers. And then I joined Sunderland, and guess what? It was all over again, but it wasn't a Friday afternoon. It was the pandemic. So I joined the University of Sunderland in 2019, and I felt I was joining a university very similar in the sense widening participation, diverse student needs. And literally 3 months later, we had an epidemic. This allowed me, in what was called the pivot to online learning, to utilise UDL and instructional design to change literally overnight curriculum assessment and delivery. This included removing all exams, no proctoring, come up with an alternative assessment mode that meets the module outcomes. Doable, happened. Resources in a multimodal format and delivery, the very basics of what are anticipating, but getting people to think about multimodal for demonstration of knowledge and learning was fundamental. The difference now is I was the PDC. So it's like, I can just tell them what to do. I want to be able to say that this is the new approach to learning and teaching. We're going to have to do this. We've got a pandemic. We've got students that need to continue their learning. The Office for Students, the regulator in England, was saying, if your students don't progress because of COVID, we will be very cross, or words to that effect. So this was great, wasn't it? And everybody said, yes, Abby, we're going to do this. We love UDL. Oh, no, they didn't. It was completely different because onboarding staff and engaging staff was very difficult. The practice, the attitude, the culture, what's in it for them, it was almost selling double glazing. I felt that my journey was going to be like this. I'm a PVC. That's my UDL goal. That's going to be really easy. And then this happened. Overt and subvert sabotage. Staff who said, we're not doing exams anymore, we're doing phase tests. They're not exams, are they? Yes, they are. We are not giving students information to scaffold their learning 48 hours before their online teaching, because they won't attend. So I'm not going to give it to them. They're going to have to wait for it. All of this became a real challenge, and this is what it was really like. And actually, I would say the outcomes of UDL that have become part of policy at the University of Sunderland are still there, but they didn't grow in the impetus that I wanted them to be. And I didn't know why. Because I actually had the clout now and the support of senior staff to do that. But why was in that water there, colleagues, there were sharks. It was that bad. So to be able to sustain universal design in a Sunderland university, yes, it was embedded within a student success plan. So we had it in policy. But most importantly, I needed to show the data. And the data and the term big data is what drives universities in England at the moment. So the strategic intention and its importance to be articulated into real life meant a mass data gathering on how UDL was impacting on students' outcomes. It was a very, very dry analysis, but we were able to show where assessments had been adjusted or moved, the difference in trend analysis. We captured students' feedback. We did a cost time analysis of staff time that was saved from assessment types compared with new assessment types to actually show the benefit. The real life scenarios, we were able to show where students' retention improved, continuation improved. This felt like me, lack of passion. This was more systematic, which is the title of the presentation, but it was more going through the argument with data rather than this is such a good thing to do. And that's quite challenging for me. The impact and the whole university approach is where Sunderland is different. So very much the priority at De Montfort University was about teaching, learning and assessment. I'd got the experience now, and I was able to show how it wasn't just what went on in the classroom, but it was about the recruitment process of the students. It was about open days. It was publicity for the university. It was our estate, our technology, how we developed learning spaces with students. And all of that whole university approach, really importantly, that HR, or people management as they were called, were really interested in tying this into change and attitude and culture work. And then I moved to the University of Lincoln. So I've been here 11 weeks, and just, you know, to highlight, on my second day, Ofsted came and we got this in from the press. University of Lincoln budget cuts devastating. So had to save 20% of budget, £30 million worth of cash within 6 months. And I'm using UDL as transformational change to do that. So looking at very traditional teaching, learning and assessment modes, and Lincoln is an amazing university. I'm privileged to work with the staff and students there, but actually They are very traditional. Tracy and I were discussing slightly earlier, it's a really modern university, but it is almost like they don't want to be different in anything because they don't want to stand out. This is absolutely the space where difference and risk can make a difference. I am challenging academic autonomy, which is not making me popular at all, because I am saying, how are you teaching? And challenging that for the effectiveness and impact, and using UDL as a framework for improvement and enhancement. And the reason that it's quite militant, I would say, my approach, is we do not have the time to change behaviour and onboard staff. There are 133 universities or registered universities in England. 103 of them are going to be in financial deficit in September. We have not had a university, a major university in England, close, fold because of financial problems. We've had one very small provider that has been absorbed by another university. Will the government let a university fail because of financial instability? Chris Husbands, a Vice-Chancellor from Sheffield Hallam University, released a report a couple of weeks ago about scenario planning for universities. And basically, an option is, yes, a significant employer within an area may close. So I work in Lincoln. It's the only university in Lincoln. If I go to the East Midlands in the UK, there are 5 or 6 universities that cover a relatively small geographical area. Who's going to be the one that breaks first? Universities are making redundancies, voluntary severance, non-pay has been reduced. This is not a conversation that I thought I'd be talking to with you, but the reality is I'm using UDL to actually make a systematic change, but again, we're back to the finances. Clear data-driven argument. I have some colleagues that are working in silos and they do not recognise the benefit of collegiality with other students because their subject is the most important thing for them. So in Lincoln, we've got this cathedral. It's quite famous. And so we do quite a lot of architecture, medieval history, and so on. Don't you think that'd be a great way of bringing colleagues and students together? We've got, you know, a medieval cathedral on a hill that's literally a stone's throw. Let's get historians, students, architects, ground planners in the same room to share teaching and learning. It's as if I have killed a baby. Because it is so perverse. Why on earth would an architect want to speak to a medieval historian? Evaluation and framework. So I have got a strategy called the Teaching and Learning Student Experience Strategy that is underpinned by UDL that has been supported, I have to say, by all levels of the university, that will change and transform teaching and learning assessment, and fundamentally it's shifting the accountability onto individual members of staff. And that accountability for their performance in a classroom, their student feedback and their outcomes. It's quite a change. It's quite a change and it's quite a challenge. I've now got experience on my side, and it's quite lonely because I'm not able to be the Duracell bunny that I was 5 years ago and be passionate and excited about it because my drivers are now different. But one thing that remains the same is that the power versus persuasion is easy when you're talking about a beneficial student experience. So that's not changed. It benefits students. The alternative is not palatable
because the university I work for and responsible for will not be able to be sustained if we don't change ways of practice. But if we can change those ways of practice for support of students, what a great way to work together. My passion is still there, but I am a bit jaded, to be absolutely honest. And I come to these things and I have great speeches from colleagues like that, and I feel quite emotional. I feel quite, wow, has that really had an impact of colleagues in that way? But this has reinvigorated me today, and I do feel I've got some of my passion back. And thank you very much for doing that. And I want to end on a bit of a high. I want to say it's not rocket science.
Oh, Lionel, glad you could make it. Can I get you a drink?
Yeah, something soft. I'm driving. Parking's an absolute nightmare around here, isn't it? Had to reverse into the tiniest of spaces. Still, I managed it. I mean, parking's not exactly brain surgery, is it? And I should know.
Why is that? Are you a doctor?
Careful, not a doctor. I'm a brain surgeon. Big difference. Big difference. Yeah, I actually know a joke about this. What's the difference between a doctor and a brain surgeon? One's not exactly brain surgery. The other is brain surgery. So, what do you guys do?
I'm an accountant.
Oh, that's good. Yeah, I could do with an accountant. Filling in those tax forms can get really confusing, can't it? Still, it's not exactly brain surgery, is it? I mean, brain surgery, believe me, is very complex. Are you an accountant too?
No, I work for a charity.
Oh, that's a very selfless job, isn't it? I really admire you. I don't think I could ever do what you do. I say that because it's emotionally draining, not because it's hard. I mean, it's not exactly brain surgery, is it? Which, as a brain surgeon, is what I do.
Lionel, here's your drink. Lionel's a brain surgeon, you know. Yeah, he mentioned it. Oh, Jeff, they keep you late at the Space Centre.
As always.
Food round. Have you met Lionel?
No, hello, Lionel.
So, Jeff, how do you earn a crust?
Well, I'm a scientist. I work mainly with rockets. It's pretty tough work. What do you do?
Why, I don't mean to boast, but I'm a brain surgeon.
Brain surgery? Not exactly rocket science, is it?
Thank you, Christian. So for me, technology is an enabler. It shouldn't be viewed as a threat. Dare I say, ChatGPT? Does everybody start having small... Okay, I remember a colleague saying to me, the internet is the end of independent thinking. Will never work. Spell check on the word, well, we'll never spell anything again, will we? Kind of things. So the use of technology to enable and not just the opportunity for students to engage in their learning, but for me, it's technology in the world, in employability. Students, graduates are going to be exposed to all of these different technology tools, and we need to be able to show the benefit for how students can use them effectively and ethically, and not to run away from it. The opportunity of, I would say, technology to push the boundaries is quite scary for academia, because this becomes a bit of a threat, because the pace of change happens and some colleagues feel a little bit out of the loop. So instead of going, I don't know about that, or I don't know how that's working, it becomes I don't like it. And I think that awareness of we need to have a more a kinder understanding that we don't know everything, but we've got a willingness to learn. But absolutely important question.
Sorry, mine's a bit more of a boring question, but it's to do with, you mentioned about the recording of all the classes, and then you mentioned then later, at a later stage, you captioned them. So we have a big problem at the moment around large scale captioning.
Can you hear me now? So it was lecture capture and how to use captioning that is accurate and timely, that doesn't cost the earth. That's pretty much what there. So this is not true UDL, I have to say, but it was a compromise because of the cost. So students that were identified as having an absolute need for 100% accuracy of transcriptions, we used Panopto's professional auto captioning. And so we identified the student modules the students were studying, and for those modules, we had a bit of a kind of boomerang, is those were within 24 hours professionally auto captioned, that was placed on then the student's virtual learning environment. For other modules, we asked staff to check them and said that it's responsibility for you to go through and to ensure that the word mitochondria was spelled in an appropriate way and didn't say Manchester, which is was one of the common things. And
Do you want to stand here? Just for the end, sorry.
it's dying. The benefit of staff check-in was obviously for their accuracy, but there was pushback because they said, we have not got time to do this. We've not got time to do this. And we went back to the legislation, is that we need to ensure the accuracy of that data and the accuracy of those transcripts. And what we found was the first time staff did it took a while. It took them a while and they were resistant, but it became quicker and quicker and quicker, and encouraged colleagues to use lecture capture for flipped classrooms in a more engaged way, because they'd already got the captions, they can use it in different ways. So ideally, it would be professional auto captioning all the time, but that became a financial barrier. Panopto have reduced their fees slightly for that. And I have to say, AI is causing some of that reasoning, because the AI auto captioning, look on Teams when you do that, it's getting better and better and better. Doesn't take into account accent, so I've got really flat vowels. So that sometimes is not picked up on captionings, but other things it is. So it's about of a halfway position, but not ideal. But students love them, all students. It was on a really individual basis, because some of this was staff and the university saying nobody else is doing this to this pace, so why are we? And there wasn't a point when we'll see if other universities kind of get into the same space and we'll do that. My argument is I used a stick of, do we want to be that university that has an independent adjudicated decision that's saying we've discriminated against our students because we've not provided them with the support that they need? And at that time, nearly a quarter of the students had disabilities. So that was the increased risk. It was a bit of a threat, but actually, if we had a risk register, it'd be on there. And the alternative that I approached it is, the university wanted to be different. So why not use this as one of their unique selling points and the difference? The difference in my recent universities is that UDL has got a higher profile now. And by having a web page that says UDL, that means they're following UDL principles. So the true articulation of the student experience has been really diluted. I felt deep penetration in the impact of UDL in Leicester far more than I have in my other universities. The others is going toe to toe and being able to really understand somebody's resilience and reluctance. And it's just common sense. The arguments, literal arguments with colleagues going, you're just making it easier for students to pass. You're dumbing down the curriculum. quote, you shouldn't be taking students onto programs that can't cope. And it was all about the students' responsibility of getting through, surviving, rather than, and I called it a UDL mirror. Look in that mirror, and what does that say as you as an educator? If I've got a group of students that are coming into my class and they've done coursework in their previous experience, that's the norm. And this course is 90% unseen exams. Think about it. I drive an automatic car. If I got into a shift car kind of thing, it's going to be a bit of a struggle. And just the obvious translation of that into day-to-day practice had bigger impact than posh presentations. And to be honest, I didn't care. I would have been happily walked away from my job, or could have been asked to leave my job. And I was in that privileged position that I was prepared to take that risk. But many colleagues aren't, and that's a luxury that I had. But actually, I was just tenacious and rather arrogant, to be fair.
That's given us plenty to think about. So thank you so much, and I hope you have the sort of same impact that you'll go away.